So JavaScript. Technically, the language has had a really bad name. It was more of an afterthought than actually anything that was created for a purpose. And especially when I started doing web, which is quite a long time ago now, when we had 56k modems and that was it. It was kind of one of those things where JavaScript was used for maybe a pop-up menu and that was it, or maybe to have snow displaying on the screen. It wasn't really used for anything amazing. But obviously, because Flash has no longer existing, and obviously it's become into much of a decline, and obviously Flash websites are no longer really popular due to things like SEO and bits and pieces like that. JavaScript has kind of come back, definitely over the last 3 or 4 years, and has had a massive popularity spike, mainly because it can do most of the cool things that Flash was able to do, and obviously brings it into a way which a developer can use it for. One of the main big things as well is also Node.js, which is a popular server-side client, which is very easy to set up and get going, and allows you to kind of create your own server and run this in a very kind of lightweight way. And obviously there's been quite a bit of popularity between this because of how it works and how it runs. And also, like we say, a lot of browsers and also web views as well within iOS and Android, they've started to allow JavaScript back in. They've started to support more and more features which have been coming through for it. So it's not been the old case of, I remember on some old devices you could actually have a tick button that would disable JavaScript completely from a page to stop anything from popping up and taking over that web view. So there's been more of an acceptance of it and it being used in the right ways on web pages and obviously on projects. And we say there's a massive open source network of developers that use JavaScript, and most of them will definitely display their code for free and obviously allow you to use that within your projects. And this is kind of being given the drive as well, because a lot of people maybe new to JavaScript or not experts in it have been able to get code and kind of play with it and mess around with it and not having to kind of create it themselves. And it's allowed them to accelerate their learning and their skill set which they've had moving forwards. So NPM, which is No Package Manager, which is something that we use within the command line tools which we have, is very, very popular. And at the moment it has about 250,000 packages available, so they're separate JavaScript projects and nearly about 1 billion downloads a week. So you can see how many people are using it and downloading stuff, which is good for us because obviously we are using JavaScript. But actually writing in core JavaScript is still not very popular. And in fact, it has quite a few limitations and a few quirks, which if you've come in from another language or you've kind of been working with something else, you might be a bit put off by it. So what we try and do is we either compile or transpile our JavaScript from another language. And there's a fair few popular ones, which I'll just list here for you. So we have CoffeeScript, TypeScript, and there is a load more of these. So if I just pop this open for you, you can see here that we've not only got kind of CoffeeScript, but there's a family of CoffeeScript which has been either changed or modified or edited. And then obviously there's other kind of languages as well. So you can see there's 1 billion and one ways to write JavaScript code. And what these kind of do is they allow you to create a JS file based upon almost like a subset language. So you can write it in a very nice and elegant way, which makes sense to you as a user and makes sense to you from the previous languages you've been working on. But obviously when it transpiles down into JS, the browser actually understands what it's doing and can read that as actual JavaScript. And Babel.js is the one that we kind of use internally in AEK. Because obviously this allows support for JSX, which is obviously the React syntax, as well as also ES6, which is what we're using currently as well. So again, we're kind of picking out one which is doing what we need it to do, really. So ReactJS, it's created by Facebook. I'm not sure if any of you have previously heard of it. but it's a bit of an emerging framework. It's only been around now, I think, about 3-4 years. And it was kind of put in direct competition straight away to AngularJS, if you've heard of that one as well. And it's basically not a full MVC framework compared to Angular or jQuery or any of those kind of things. It more focuses on the view layer of the project and how that information is displayed and re-rendered and how things work with it. It's promotes is obviously a unidirectional data flow, which means that data can kind of be pushed not only further down into kind of sub areas, but it can also be pulled back up as well and kind of moved around and worked with. One of the easier ways I see it is kind of almost like a waterfall where data can come in from the top and drop down, but also it can kind of go back up as well. It's kind of a circle of life type situation. It's all component driven, which means you can create your own components and you can reuse those components across not only one page but multiple pages as well, which obviously saves in coding and writing of code. And it's supported by JSX syntax. So Facebook decided to have a new dot, and like HTML and XHTML, they wanted to have .jsx, which is JavaScript extended. And it gives you a kind of a newer way of writing code. So this here is just an example of a React component. It's a very basic example, and this is not the coding demo, so don't worry about that. So you can see here we've got a component called myButton. And this here is just telling us that we are kind of creating something. We're creating a class or a name, which is called myButton, and we're going to be using that. Now we have a render, which we always do have in a React area, and we have a return. So these are always kind of within a component or on a page. And inside of that, you can see we're using just a standard HTML button. And we've also got a style tag set onto this as well. And you can see here we've got color, which is obviously then going to change the color of the text within inside of it. And we've got something called this.props.color. So a component can have properties, which is obviously what prop stands for, and obviously there we are going to be creating one called color to be used. And within inside of that as well, a component will also have a properties of children. So children will be whatever elements are inside of that component at that time. Now this could be an A tag, this could be a paragraph tag, this could be an ally tag, anything really, any HTML or text or anything like that will be populated and literally placed here for us. To kind of show that as well. So if I now come back into kind of my main index page, you can see here I'm creating a variable called content and I'm just populating it with a div and 3 of these components. You can see here I've got a property set which is going to be a different color. You can see red, green and blue. And obviously the children in this case is going to be the word red, green and blue. And the final line here is kind of the key one which we have, which is a react.render. And a react.render basically allows you to take an item which you've created, maybe this content item for example, and it tells you what you want to replace. Now within React you could replace just a single div if you wanted to on the right hand side of your website, or maybe a banner at the top. But because obviously we use React across a whole AEK screen and we don't really want anything else on that page, we replace the document body, which means that the whole kind of area is ours to play with and work with. And the result is this. So when that gets rendered into a browser and comes back out, you can see here we've got a HTML tag, a body tag, which obviously are just standard tags, and then we obviously have that div tag from before and our 3 HTML buttons, all with a color attached to them and also all with the name attached to them as well. So you can see how that works. We've now got a component, so if I change that component in any way, if I change that to, you needed another property in there, maybe like a link, obviously that would then generate some way of on button you could have a click and a link through to something. So we have something called CSS preprocessors as well. And what we can kind of do here, because again CSS is not a great language to write in, especially for bigger projects and bigger scales. We kind of work with things such as less, Sass, not so much, and stylus. and these allow us to create CSS mix-ins and use variables within our CSS documents to reuse things as we go forward.